All right, everyone. Now we've got to talk about another proposal on gun control, which are red flag laws. I guess the idea of a red flag law is this. If someone's like acting like a psycho, they're not doing anything actually illegal, but they're just generally kind of out of it, like maybe they're turning into a lunatic, is the idea that another person can actually file and try to have them disarmed, I suppose, because they might be a threat to themselves and others. This is also blatantly unconstitutional. You may say it's pragmatic. In some cases, it probably would be. You have someone, they're being threatening. They have maybe like some relative knows that there's verbal abuse in a relationship. Things are getting heated up. They're worried it goes out of hand. They file this to try to get the dude disarmed so he doesn't shoot his wife or something. The problem with this is that you have just imputed punishment on a person without a proper proceeding. You have not brought forth charges against them. You've issued no warrant. You've really done nothing within the constraints of the constitutionally based legal system to actually determine that there is enough wrongdoing to deprive them of any right. And it's a right. It's not a privilege. Owning a firearm in the United States, unless you are a violent felon, is not a privilege. It's a right. You don't have to ask anybody's permission to do so. That's the whole meaning of the Constitution. It's like the First Amendment. You have the right to speak your mind. You have the right to express yourself. You have the right to print literature in the most literal sense, I believe. That extends to the online world. We're still trying to work that out as a culture, whether people should have the right to speak freely through the mode of communication generally used to speak on now. But you have the right to scribble a note at least and, give it to another person or post up a billet or erect a stump, as long as you pay your permit, which is also unconstitutional, generally in the most literal sense. You have the right to give a speech or whatever. Red flag gun laws, though, are blatantly unconstitutional. In the same sense, it would be like saying that a person, they're acting erratically. They might say something that's illegal, therefore we're going to put a zipper on their mouth to prevent them from potentially committing slander or a credible threat. Or they're acting a little bit odd, so society has the right to preemptively disarm them. You could use this exact same reasoning to say, oh, well, it's okay that we bombed this other country that did not attack us. Sort of what we do in foreign policy these days, since we haven't had an actual war in quite some time, technically, since Vietnam. Now, it's okay. We hauled off and bombed them back to the Stone Age, but, we kind of thought that they might be a threat to us. We kind of think that Iran's threatening, so we're just going to go and preemptively, bomb their reactor and this missile base. No, you know what that ends up doing is it gives credibility to their claim then, if they attack you, of self-defense. What this would generate is an odd scenario where the state would be acting in a tyrannical enough fashion where if someone refused to give up their guns and then technically commits a crime in killing a person who's attempting to disarm them, whether it's a family member, a cop, or whatever, some agent shows up at their door, as a technicality, it gives at least some degree of moral and constitutional weight to their argument of, hey, I'm defending my rights. Because this itself is unconstitutional. By the way, if ever there was a situation where the implementation of some legal maneuvering would lead to jury nullification, this would be beyond, I think, even the drug war. The number of people who want to legalize what would generally be classed as simple possession of narcotic substances is presumably considerably lower than the number of people who are like, no, you shouldn't be able to take away someone's fucking guns just on a whim. Just because some judge says, okay, well, this family member feels worried, that's evidence enough for us, so we're taking your guns pending a warrant to look into your behavior to see if we're going to class you as mentally ill and take your guns away. This, by the way, this would go hand in hand with that argument. If Trump were to implement all these things, or any other politician, so that you could essentially, a family member could say, well, we're gonna have their guns taken away, have them looked into, and you also had a total arbitrary determinant of whether a person could or could not own a firearm anyway based on some, again, totally arbitrary, not entirely scientific classification that they're mentally ill, a subjective societal standard that doesn't even hold true in many countries. Look, there are cultures that say, well, you're hearing voices, you're blessed by our deity. They wouldn't culturally even consider it an illness. They'd consider it a blessing. Oh, this person's got depression. Well, drink some chamomile. Smoke weed, would say the ancient Scythian. This person is angry all the time. Well, they'd make a good berserker, says the ancient Norseman. It's a totally subjective determinant. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. So I would say that's unconstitutional. And it would be so easily abused. It would be ripe for abuse because let's say for example, some individual within the legal system, some lawyer, whatever, just doesn't like a person. They're too outspoken about their political beliefs. Maybe they cucked them, they screwed their wife. Says, oh, I'm going to harass this person, and now they can do it legally. It would be a grave offense within the legal system to attempt to target another person by saying, well, I'm going to try to get a warrant for, to try to get them raided, like you SWAT someone. You can get charged with murder if the person is killed during that raid. You can be charged with first-degree premeditated murder. Even they can definitely sue you in a civil court regardless. For every damage they've accrued, pain and suffering, psychological trauma, they can put you in the poorhouse for what originally was considered just a prank. By the way, it's bad news to do these things. How much more then would it be a problem if you could simply file a piece of paper saying, well, I reasonably believe this person might do harm, and end up with officers going there and say, well, you got to give up your guns. One of your neighbors is concerned. So you're saying that you don't have the right to bear arms anymore. It's contingent upon your behavior as witnessed by your friends, your family members, your neighbors. No, what this will do, it'll be the same thing as trying to suppress people, censor them online for having fanatic opinions. It will cause them to withdraw like a hermit into an echo chamber. It'll cause them to hide their weapons. It'll also cause them to hide their feelings. Thus, they will bottle them up, tend to blow up, they will snap at some point potentially. I think it would be dangerous to implement such a thing. Other people, somebody was pointing out earlier, I think Shapiro was saying that it was in a modified form, it was a good idea. I totally disagree. I think that people should be open about things. We need a more open and transparent society. People can talk about their feelings, they can feel like things are being addressed, they can speak freely, and they should be able to exhibit that behavior. Other people then are responsible for determining whether they want to associate with or be around that individual. If you've got a case where someone's beating their wife or kids or something, that's a criminal complaint. Yes, they can be arrested for that. Not just disarmed, arrested for those things. You can get a restraining order, but the fact that somebody else says, well, they're angry or they harassed me 10 years ago, I've got a restraining order, doesn't negate their Second Amendment right. No, they have to fall under, there are certain criminal classifications where people can be disarmed. Personally, I think it should only be for violent felonies or repeated significant violent misdemeanors, and it should be a temporary span of time. Perpetual punishment is explicitly banned in the Constitution. Explicitly banned. I think that it's absolutely unconstitutional to disarm a person simply because they happen to have been a felon. In some cases, you're not even talking about a violent felony, by the way. You're not talking about, oh, they killed someone. Oh, they raped somebody at knife point. No, we're talking about, money laundering or something, some white-collar crime. They stole a car. Well, did anyone get hurt? No. It's not exactly a violent crime. They didn't try to run somebody over. They were just trying to do it for money reasons. I wouldn't prevent them from owning a firearm. No. There's no reason to believe that they're going to use it in an offensive fashion. For some of those crimes, it's a crime on burglary or something. They're probably trying not to end up firing a shot. They get caught if they do. They're trying not to get killed at the same time. And they're certainly not carrying an AR-15 around where they're going to rob people of their property. It's just not going to happen. It's just crazy. So no, I would stand against red flag gun laws if Trump proposes them. It's unconstitutional and every state should stand against them. Some people are saying it's still 4D chess. Like he's trying to make a really top-heavy anti-Second Amendment maneuver here so that then courts can strike them down and make it clear that those forms of gun control can't be used. I don't know that that's a great idea, though, because if it goes to the Ninth Circuit, it might find that it's actually constitutional. And you don't yet have a conservative enough court to guarantee that the Second Amendment prevails and survives intact through the Supreme Court at the moment. Wait until Ginsburg kicks off, then go ahead and go wild with feeding cases to them specifically to get a predetermined, pro-second outcome. If that's really the reason why, that's funny. That would be hilarious. The NRA, by the way, would love it. They would be laughing all the way to the bank. By the way, it's funny. United Air, which I've always used, has decided to boycott doing business, I guess, with the NRA or something. So I'm announcing I'm no longer going to be using United Airlines. Not that it's a big loss. I mean, there are more than a few airlines in the country. Any business that is announcing that it's boycotting or cutting ties with the National Rifle Association, which represents legitimate, lawful gun owners, not criminals, not fascists, not crazy people who are blowing themselves up or whatever. Anyone, any business that is breaking off with them, I would break off with that business. Thankfully, if you look at a list, it's like, what was it, Rent-A-Car, Enterprise, and some of these groups, like, who cares? Who even uses half these companies anymore? They're like vestigial. That's about all. Peace out.